Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast. Training camp season is underway, which means that the fans are responsible for taking videos, not the social media team. And actually, if it is a social media team, it's like a 30-second, pump up video from the day of practice. But it's exciting. We are finally here. We are finally actually have something to talk about. Should I say it is create rumors season? Like it is create rumor season. So I mean, like we could theoretically create our own rumor from training camp. Well, is it accurate? Well, that's the other part of that story. But nonetheless, it is basically create rumor season with it being training camp. We have stuff to talk about, though. That is the most important part. And of course, everybody, I hope you had a chance to see Deadpool and Wolverine.
There are Deadpool and Wolverine spoilers in my background. Sorry, not sorry.
Anyway, I hope you guys are having a fantastic night.
And no one will understand what that is.
Fantastic night, fantastic evening. Yeah, like I said, we have a lot to talk about today in terms of training camp. But first things first, Brandon, how are you doing, my man? You doing good?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. Over the weekend, I played the best round of golf of my life.
And what is the best round of golf consist of?
It wasn't like score-wise because I had some bad putts. Like putting screwed me. I had some 3 putts. I had some legit shots at birdie. Multiple times. I was striping everything, man. First drive, like I get there, I get to the course, I go to the range, and I'm just like having fun. I'm not stressed. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just swinging a golf club. And that's like the most consistent drives I've ever hit ever on the range. I'm like, oh, cool. That's good. Go to the first hole, just absolute perfect, just minor fade. Ends up like 75 yards from the hole. Get it onto the green. Horrible 3-putt, complete bogey. No, I think I got a par. But it just continued from there. Like one hole, I think it was a par 5. I'm not even kidding you. I drove this thing almost 300 yards. Like I think like 110 yards from the green on my second stroke, but I thought that I lost the ball. Like I literally thought the ball went into the water. So I hit a second ball and I played the second ball, which wasn't nearly as good. It was still good, but it wasn't as good as the first. I get down towards the green and I see my first ball and it's literally dead middle of the fairway, like 110 yards to the green. And I'm like, holy shit, like almost 110 yards to the pin. And it's like, holy shit, this is insane. It felt good. It felt good. I had some horrible putts. I did have some still pretty good putts. I made a few pars. I had several shots at what could have been a birdie if I can putt, which I still can't. The putting was not with me, but that was the best drives I've ever had. That was some of the best chipping I've ever had. Some of the best iron shots I've ever had. My putting was still atrocious, but damn, that was good.
It is a very good feeling whenever things.
It was an out of body experience.
I mean, and I think that's also golf in a nutshell. Whenever you have one thing work or 2 or 3 things work, there's just one particular area that doesn't work. And and what you kind of described, in terms of like how good, it felt to have a really good round was, I actually was playing golf with Bobby, the other day, and we went to go play Plum Creek, and Bobby had an unbelievable round. I mean, like it was the best I've ever seen him hit his driver. Like, yeah. It was pretty incredible. And so when it's on like that, when it is on and you're hitting the ball well and you're driving, like it is a really good feeling. Now the finishing aspect, well, that's a conversation for another day. But I'm hoping, you and I can get out and play sometime, this year. Life is just so busy right now, but yeah, hopefully we can.
Amen.
But hopefully we can, and not Top Golf, by the way. But yeah, hopefully we can play some golf. First things first, though, let's talk about some Denver Broncos. I see Robert is in the house. Pride of Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. Got a chance to see the guys. Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. I should say 2/3 of the guys. Caleb was, a bit. Should I say soft, and he decided to be a DNP, a do not participate, when it came to training camp. Nonetheless, it was a great time. Got a chance to see 2/3 of Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. It was a lot of fun, and got a chance to see Pinky's daughter also, which was really cool. But yeah, it was also on Saturday, so they didn't get a chance to have padded practice, Brandon, but I was there Friday and Saturday. But it really kind of picked things up. It really picked things up in terms of the padded practice. I want to say it was Monday. And then you got a chance to see some different things. Like you got a chance to see some different things, some ebbs and flows of, what you would imagine with training camp and everything. But I will at least ask you. Obviously, you are in, the other neck of the woods.
The other neck of the woods, bro. I'm still in Colorado.
No, but for what you were able to gather and recap yourself, what was it on your feedback, I should say, from last week to this week that you were able to at least catch up on? First things first, let's go ahead and just do an update here. Quinn Bailey was injured. Injured.
He has a fractured ankle, I think.
Yeah. Fractured ankle. Very scary situation from everything that we're reading up on social media, and even just catching up with Cody in our Promptly Orange Slack chat. It was a very sketchy situation. Like the moment that he fractured his ankle was the moment that they brought in an ambulance. I think even George Payton made an appearance with Quinn Bailey. Very scary situation.
Apparently the cart came out like immediately.
Yeah, like it was immediate, and the pop was so loud.
Yeah.
That everybody heard it. And when I'm saying everybody, I'm saying fans included. The fans heard it and everything, and it was, they weren't sure if it was the pads or if it was something else, and unfortunately it was something else. And our prayers go out to Bailey. Hopefully he can have a speedy recovery. And we'll get a chance to dive more on the swing tackle battle, guard tackle, battle with Bailey being out. But what has been some of your initial thoughts as far as training camp right now?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of talked about this last week, but I'm just continuously surprised and excited about hearing how good Javonte Williams continues to look.
Yeah,
coming off of year 2 off of that major knee injury, multi-ligament knee injury, which is nice to hear. Because again, last week we talked about there were some concerns in the running back room in terms of what does that depth look like and what does that starting room look like with Audric Estime, who had that knee scope, who also had did you see that clip of him? I think it was yesterday, where he hit the truck stick on someone. I don't know who was trying to get him.
Sadly, it was Omar Brown.
It was Omar. Of course it was Omar Brown. I never found out who it was. That's amazing. Nebraska Omar Brown. And that was some pop there. But yeah, just continue to hear how good Javonte has been.
But to Omar's credit, he could have just fallen on the grass and let bygones be bygones. But no, he stood up. He didn't fall on the ground. So
you should do the Oklahoma drill with Audric Estime.
Please no. I choose life.
Anyway, that was cool to hear and see. And one of the things too that was kind of nice to hear about, at least in the first day of padded practice, was how Bo Nix bouncing back and having to that point arguably his best day of camp, where he threw 3 picks. He threw several picks in the beginning, and then kind of turned it around, came back, threw several touchdowns. He had a touchdown to, was that Saturday? I thought that was also
There was a point
Was
where
it the 27th? Yeah, it was the 27th.
yeah.
It was Saturday. Yep. He had a touchdown to a running back at the backfield. I remember which one.
Right.
P. Ryan. He had a touchdown, I think, to
Dulcich.
Bandy. I don't remember the wide receiver, but Dulcich had one. There was a wide receiver. I can't remember who it was, but had it like basically came back and had a good day. Maybe it was only those two, but he threw 3 picks, came back, was able to turn it around and have a good day, which is nice. And then today, apparently, he followed that up with, and I know we're kind of skipping a couple days here, but apparently followed that up with his, if that was at that point his best day of practice, like if this has been his best day of training camp so far here, and Sean Payton specifically padded. Sean Payton specifically has like said how much he likes, the progress that he's made so far in training camp. One of the things though that did stand out to me was like how much there was continuous reports and even you could see it of like Jarrett Stidham kind of being the best quarterback in training camp, which isn't terribly surprising. I mean, Bo Nix, he started over 6 games in his collegiate career, but he's still a rookie in the NFL. He hasn't played in the system before. He hasn't played with Sean Payton before. He hasn't played with his receivers before. Jarrett Stidham has obviously played in the NFL. This is also his second year in this system with this team. So like it kind of makes sense that he'd be better. Zach Wilson up and down. I think I heard something about Zach Wilson like not being a lock to make the team. I don't know. I mean, obviously that's still not, you don't know, but he was okay. I think he had a couple good passes. But specifically you heard today, like Bo Nix having a really good day. And my boy, Josh Reynolds, who I continue to say is an underrated wide receiver, had himself a day. Like everyone knows how much we love Jaquan McMillan, who was all over him, and like high pointed the ball, got the reception down, and then I think he also was covered by a different cornerback. I think it was the new one, Levi Wallace, and had a great catch as well. And he just continuously had some. He kind of mossed some people. He had some old prime Cortland Sutton catches of like, it's a 50-50 ball, but not really. It's a 70-30 ball with Josh Reynolds. So that was cool to hear. But yeah, the biggest thing to me was again continuing to hear how good Javonte Williams has been, and then just kind of seeing what's happening with the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and Jarrett Stidham kind of being even talked about as like he's the starter day one, but then it comes back as like, well, Bo Nix had a great day on Saturday, and then he had a great day again this week today. So definitely interesting to see. Some of the clips I did see of Bo's throwing, like the ball comes out smooth. Like that's a catchable ball. He overthrew some guys too, which happens, but hard to overthrow someone when you can't throw the ball far, right?
Well,
wink, wink.
I was going to say, given the critiques and everything about his arm strength, that's actually a plus for me. The fact that he's actually overthrowing guys and specifically overthrowing receivers like Troy Franklin, that's a bit of a plus for me necessarily. Because I mean, like, yeah, you don't necessarily want to make a huge habit of it, but in camp, like, it's also about getting used to guys, getting used to your players, getting used to your wide receivers. And so the fact that he's overthrowing wide receivers kind of tells you that his arm is a bit underrated. And I think that's always been the case ever since, with the whole draft process.
Yeah. The only other thing that is of note, but wasn't necessarily surprising to me, is that how the defensive line is eating. And I don't know if that's because the defensive line is very, very good, which I believe that to be true, or if the offensive line is very, very bad, which terrifies me. Yeah. But I don't. I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't think it's necessarily the offensive line being horrible. I don't think it's also necessarily just the defensive line being absolutely elite. But I think the defensive line is going to be really good, and I'm excited to see what happens there. I think Nick Bonito was injured today.
He returned to practice.
He returned to practice from an injury.
But he was injured yesterday. He
was injured yesterday. Yeah, he was injured earlier.
He had a back thing that was going
on. So that was nice to kind of see him come back. Caden Stearns was activated off the PUP list, which was really nice to see.
I like how that one. I don't think
he actually did anything, but go ahead.
I was gonna say that one was almost like built up, almost like a drama, or like a drama, series because it was like you didn't know. Like the moment you heard the thing about Sean and about his hamstring and everything, you're like, oh great, like
Yeah.
we should probably bring Justin back. Like that kind of conversation. Like the safety room significantly took a hit. Well, hold my beer. He's back. Like a couple days later, and actually, it was Saturday when I first noticed that he was back out there. He was doing the stretches. He was doing the walkthrough. They really weren't in pads, obviously, but he returned to practice and everything. So, and the fact that he returned is obviously, the victory in of itself. The fact that he's back.
Yeah.
So, let's. You've already you mentioned a lot. So let's peel back on some of the stuff.
Go for it.
That you mentioned here, and we'll add in some of the some other takeaways, and people who are in the chat, please feel free to chime in some of your guys' takeaways. Robert, if you're still here, feel free to chime in on some of the takeaways that you felt, in terms of being there on that Saturday, and anybody that's watching, listening over on Twitch or X or, and of course, YouTube or even Facebook, please chime in, please let us know. What were some of your guys' takeaways from Broncos training camp? And we'll get your comments on the stream. So let's peel back first your Javonte Williams thing, because I think we touched on it briefly last week. Obviously, Greg Dulcich. I mean, he's a big victor in terms.
Oh yeah, that was the last thing I was going to say. Was Greg Dulcich?
He continues to stack days. Like, he continues to stack days. And so that's the big thing. But Javonte Williams is very neck and neck. I feel like with Greg in terms of like just the overall feel of what you see with him. And they need a big year from him, obviously. I mean, he's in a contract year. There's two quick things that I felt like. One, we mentioned last week in regards to Javonte Williams, but two, from the mental psychiness for Javonte. It was something I don't know if we touched on or even we brought up last week. And that's, well, first off, he looks light. I mean, it's pretty evident. Like, he looks light on his feet. He's lost a number. He's lost a good deal of weight. I think he's actually back at his playing weight when he was at North Carolina. So that's a big deal. That is actually a big deal, because that means that now he's actually at that playing weight, when he was coming into the league, when he was that bowling ball and he was fleet of foot and he was able to drag those tacklers and really get those yards after contact.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is the mental side of it for him. We didn't get a chance to talk about this last week, but his brace is off.
Yeah.
His brace is off. And I think that, that is for anybody that, has played sports before, we've all been through it. When you have an ankle brace on, or when you have a knee brace on and you're playing some sports, or maybe not golf, as Brandon was talking about earlier, maybe not golf, but like, basketball, football, soccer, the mental hurdle that you have when you have a brace that's on your knee or elbow or anything, when you finally have that off, you finally feel like you've been freed. And I think that having that brace not on his knee anymore is just a freeing feeling for him, that he can now, it's almost like that extra confirmation, like, okay, I can now maybe take this another step, another level, if I feel like, for that game. And obviously he needs to, but just the mental aspect of that, like he can finally take it to that next step.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like you talked on it with like it's the physical aspect of it, with like just feeling like you can't really move. And I'm not speaking from experience. I'm, thankful to not have had to do anything in a brace, but I can't imagine you have the same ability that you'd have without the brace. But also just the mental side of it is honestly bigger, in my opinion, in the sense of like trusting yourself to put weight on that leg, and cut on that leg, and put more pressure on that leg with, blocking, whatever you're going to be doing, especially tight end where you're doing all those things, is got to be hard to work through, and not having that on there anymore has got to feel nice. But it definitely seems like he's, had some nice camps so far here, and we absolutely needed him to. I think the biggest thing is like, you still heard that he's not great about blocking, but I mean, honestly, he wasn't drafted to be a blocker. I mean, yes, I know that people are asked to block in the NFL. Like, that's just what you do as a tight end. That's what you do as a tight end in Sean Payton's offense. But like, he was, in my opinion, like, you saw what he did in college. He was used as more of an offensive weapon. And, I think if we can at least get that out of him, you can work around blocking, use a different tight end, use another offensive lineman. And, not that that's not something that he should continue to work on, but I think that, I don't know, I think it's maybe a little overblown, just in the sense that, like, we desperately need more. We just need more offense. We need more talent. We need more explosiveness. We need more targets for Bo Nix that he can trust. And if Greg Dulcich can provide that, especially the tight end position, which just has been completely devoid, it feels like, to be honest, of that talent. There saw some Noah Fant flashes, but he still hasn't really put it together, even on different teams. So I need Greg Dulcich to be good. I need it.
And I think that's why the biggest victory is just him simply getting out of camp, and just simply, to basically quote Baron Browning, in terms of what his goal is, right? For the upcoming season, to play 17 games. I feel like for Dulcich, playing 17 games, right? Playing for a full season, and any of those guys that are really, going through, some of those mental blocks and really wanting to be healthy for this year, playing 17 games. Let's just start with that. But for Dulcich, I like how you said that there's ways you can work around that. And I think that whether that's with possibly like the wide receiver room, or you bring in another body within the tight end room, aka Nate Atkins, or you keep Adam Trapman. But I think that there's ways where, with it being, with ways that you could probably look into it, like guys like Little Jordan Humphrey, maybe a Brandon Johnson.
Little Jordan Humphrey and Michael Bandy also have had pretty good plays.
I feel like wide receiver room in general, has been one where I pleasantly surprised, in terms of the wide receiver room in general. Virgil's been really solid. Michael Bandy, guys, obviously I know preseason hasn't happened yet, but Michael Bandy might actually end up being the preseason darling of the offense. I wouldn't put it past it that he ends up being the darling of, the offense this particular preseason. How do I say this? There's players that they can have that can operate within the slot, but I don't think that they have a pure slot receiver. And Bandy, I think, is a pure slot receiver. And that is something I don't think that they've truly ever had. It's dangerous when you have players that can do multiple different things. Like, obviously, I feel like Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, they can operate within the slot given certain, packages and whatever that have you. But if you can have a pure slot receiver, it does kind of, open up your playbook a little bit more with guys like a Franklin and a Mims. And Mims, of course, is another one who is actually having a spectacular camp. If there is one player that you want to buy stock in for 2024, I would definitely want to choose Marvin Mims right now.
I already did. Too late.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm so excited to see what Mims does this season. I think we need to find ways to get him the ball more. I think Sean Payton probably realizes that, so I'm hyped.
Does it bother you, speaking of the wide receiver, does it bother you the feedback that we're getting from, at least with what Sean Payton was saying, that coaches are really harping on Franklin or, yelling at Franklin or, anything like this, that it like just kind of being, almost like in his face a little bit in terms of like practice and everything, like yelling at him.
Am I surprised that that's happened?
Or are you reading would you say we're reading too much into it, if you will?
I think he's a rookie. Like, he's a rookie that, yes, has some predefined chemistry with his quarterback, but like, there's going to be growing pains. I'm not concerned. I'm not going to say I'm surprised. I'm not going to say I'm not surprised. Like, it's a reality, and that is a reality that happens sometimes with rookie wide receivers when they are not some kind of elite Marvin Harrison Jr. Type prospect. Jamar Chase as a rookie, Justin Jefferson as a rookie. When you're not those guys, Malik Neighbors, from what I've heard, like, not that you can't have an amazing rookie season or even become an amazing wide receiver, but it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it happens, and it shouldn't necessarily surprise you, and I don't think it's cause for concern at all.
And I think that people need to remember.
And apparently he's also had some pretty good days too, again, recently.
Right. And I think that people need to remember that, hard coaching also makes you better. Like, having that hard coaching will make you a much better player.
Yeah.
Another wide receiver of note, we just mentioned it, Josh Reynolds had a fantastic day today. He's certainly not wide receiver one, but I think, and you and I have made this comparison, and I think people in the chat have made this comparison a little bit, but Josh Reynolds might actually end up being the Tim Patrick of this team going forward.
Isn't that just Tim Patrick?
But you know what I mean? Like,
no, I get it.
Yeah. Given where Patrick is, I mean, I definitely, so here's the other thing, and it's a nice little go hand in hand. Having two Tim Patricks, two reliable, consistent weapons, I think is going to be, very valued by this offense. And I think that Tim Patrick, one of the guys who truly is actually having a great camp so far. There were a couple tough catches that he made on that Saturday and even that Friday that he was just like, please come down on your leg and, let's finish the play and everything. Like, you kind of had a bit of a, like a scare moment just for a half second there in terms of like, the way he was able to go up and grab the ball in the air. So he's actually had some really, really solid moments, I felt like, in camp. So the wide receiver room in general is something that I think, it still has its question marks, right? But I think it's definitely one of those real pleasant surprises as far as everything. So actually, I will actually ask this question from the quarterback side of things. Is it really about how good the wide receiver room also is, but also is it how good is that quarterback room with how good maybe they've been able to play in practice?
You're saying, should we give more credit to the wide receivers and more credit to the quarterbacks?
Yeah. Should we actually be giving a little bit more credit to the quarterbacks?
I think it's a mix of both.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think, yes, the quarterback is definitely can receive some credit here with like being able to make that kind of throw, but the wide receiver is also the one that runs the route, gets open, is able to make that catch, especially some of the catches we've heard and seen with, again, Josh Reynolds with the 50-50 balls. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I think they both deserve equal credit. And I mean, am I going to highlight that rookie quarterback Bo Nix is making some plays here? And, I'm not saying it's like because the wide receiver ran the perfect route and got open, but like Bo Nix also had to make that read and make that throw and put it where it needs to go. So I think it's fair to give them both credit.
I figured it's fitting we end with quarterbacks. We'll end with quarterback. We'll give the others its due because the quarterbacks is going to dominate a fair amount of the conversation. The defensive line, offensive line stuff is, is another really, really important conversation as far as with where things are right now for the Broncos. And I think one of the strongest takeaways that I have for the Broncos defensive line, especially right now, if what we feel is true, and if what we feel, or I should say, with what with some Broncos media members feel in terms of, Jonathan Franklin Myers being possibly the best defensive lineman on the team right now, right?
Yeah.
Actually, not having him at practice these last couple of days because of a death in the family, but seeing the defense overall play really well when he's not there, at least tentatively right now, should give Bronco fans a bit of some hope, knowing the fact that they might actually be 2 or 3 deep at that position to where they can be able to alternate and have some productive snaps and still get to the quarterback. Zach Allen is continuing to have really good days. And because of the importance of the defensive line, it will also benefit guys like Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, some of those other guys, Nick Benito, even Jonah Ellis, of course, right? Like guys that, are really going to be, able to get to the quarterback. If they're not able to get home on the inside, they're not able to get home on the outside either, So I think that the fact that they're able
to... it's going to make a huge difference.
So it's going to be a big, big difference. I agree. The fact that they have an upgraded defensive line. So my biggest...
Also being able to actually stop a running back when he has the ball is going to be pretty cool to see.
So my big takeaway, at least within these last couple of days, is that the defensive line has been able to stack days together without John Franklin Myers. So guys like Zach Allen, Angelo Blackson, even though it may have been 7-on-7, broke up a play on 7-on-7, when it probably would have been a sack. And, there were probably a handful of times that there were plays that Zach Wilson probably had a sack, but it also goes to show you the defense was just in his face consistently on Saturday and even Friday. So, like the defensive line just overall just feels like it's a very, very improved unit. And we haven't even but the defensive line is an improved unit, and to where we haven't been able to talk about guys like, Elijah Garcia or, Matt Henningsen or some of those other guys who are kind of lost in the weeds a little bit.
So, yes. And also the one thing to talk about with the defensive line performance here so far is also how good Baron Browning has apparently looked. So that's just something to file away for the future.
Contract situation, regular season, Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that'll be fun. That'll be fun to see.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Like, I hope that he puts it together the way that he clearly has the way to, like, he has the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And he could be the dude. He could be the dude. That's all I'm going to say. I'm excited. From what I've heard, like, he's killing it.
He touched on it today. One, he was definitely not his playful self in the presser. He was far more professional in his presser today. But he touched on it in terms of like the development and with where he's at. And he said, really just, sticking to one side, and he said it's a bit of a transition to go from inside to outside. So the fact that he's now, a couple of years now where he's able to been, on that outside is really going to benefit him, than now having that goal of, wanting to be there for 17 games. The talent level is finally there, or not finally, but the talent is there for Browning. I actually think the talent is there for, Benito and some of these other guys, but I just think Browning is, as we said earlier, is just that guy that can just take it to that, that other level. And I wouldn't, if there is a sack artist of the 4 or 5, when I'm saying 4, I'm saying Browning, Cooper, Benito, and Ellis. If there is a sack artist, at least right now, who I would feel probably confident in, that's going to maybe getting 10 sacks, it's Browning or Cooper.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I do think, I don't know if I'd put him in the double-digit sack conversation yet, but I would say I think Jonah Ellis is going to surprise people there, and Thomas Incoom is also having himself a little bit of a day today, specifically.
File that one away.
What's that?
Let's just file him away.
File that one away. Thomas Incoom, who, if you guys don't know, is a second year rookie, third year, not rookie, but like he's really new. Flashed. He's really flashed. Came out of Central Michigan, I think. Just kind of like a toolsy guy that was someone to keep an eye on, and he also had some pretty good plays in the
preseason last year.
Also, though, in the Senior Bowl in beginning of last year as well. This is his second year. But yeah, I've heard some good things about him as well. So there's definitely going to be some more names that are making some splashes in the edge room as pass rushers. Jonah Ellis also, I'm excited. Like, I'm excited to see what happens with him. Clearly he is a, toolsy, what's the word I'm looking for? He has the skill set. He has the moves. He has the pass rush moves to succeed. Not as good against the run, but as a pass rush specialist, I am pretty excited to see how he does. And speaking of rookie defensive players, we've also heard some pretty good things about Chris Abrams-Drain as well. So, I mean, yeah, honestly, like, sounded pretty good for some of these rookies. Also, I got to plug in my headset.
Well, as far as as you mentioned about Chris Abrams-Drain, you just going forward with the secondary, the cornerback two is one of those big developing things that we want to see as far as the position battle. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've seen is actually almost a revolving door as far as some of those people that are opposite of Pat Surtain. One guy in particular is someone who's been clowned a time or two over here on Manly Broncos Podcast. I will admittedly say that, and that would be Damari Mathis. Damari Mathis is having a really good camp right now. And granted, camp, if you really want to shine out, you got to put the final product out there on the field. And so he's got to be able to show that out there, in preseason and, possibly be that, quarterback too. If they're able to establish truly a cornerback too that's opposite of that, I think, it'll be really beneficial. But Riley Moss has been solid, okay, like, not abysmal. Levi Wallace has been there as far as rotating there. I've seen some snaps where yes, the rumors are true. J-Mac has gotten some run as far as being possibly outside and boundary of PS2. We also we know that he is the second best corner. Doesn't necessarily mean that he will be the boundary corner, but he's been getting some run at
also confirmed that at least from what I've so far heard here, actually let me see if I can find the exact quote. I can't find it, but basically confirmed Riley Moss exists. It was I think it was on a pass from Bo Nix to, I think it was Marvin Mims, where he layered it in there to hit Mims in stride, and Riley Moss ended up knocking it away. Like, Mims had it, and Moss was able to get in there and make the play on the ball. So confirmed, Riley Moss exists. He is a cornerback that plays on this team. He is alive. It's alive. And we'll see what happens from there. But he's alive. He exists. He's a cornerback. He does something. And no hate to Riley Moss, like, I want you to be good, please. I want you to work out, but I feel like we need to see signs of life, and apparently there's at least some sign of life.
Well, and he's been okay at camp. I mean, it's not elite. It's not to where you're basically looking at it to where you're saying he's getting all the reps at cornerback too. It's nothing like that. But it's one where he's made a few plays here and there. Some of the other competition as far as later on down that depth chart, and I know the preseason. I always love the preseason when you get a chance to see the battle of the underdogs and you get a chance to see some of those players vie for not just our roster spot, but for someone else's roster spot. Two corners that I feel like is worth filing away, for Bronco fans is a guy by the name of Art Green and Reese Taylor. Art Green is a track star when he was in college. He's a former track star that got converted to go play football or asked to go play football. He actually plays safety and corner. He's a bit of a bigger corner. He's a cornerback safety when he was in college, but obviously he's a corner here. But being a track star, he can track balls. Like he can go and track balls, and so he's fast. He can be able to get there quickly. He's had a few flashes here and there. I think there was a ball that was thrown really deep down the sideline. He was able to track and break a play up down the sideline. Reese Taylor feels like probably more of your scrappy player. He wears number 35. Art Green is number 28. But both of those players are, few of them would be ones that I would want to file away if I was Bronco fans as you're gearing up for preseason. Art Green, I just feel like specifically is one I want to file away because those track star athletes, for some reason or another, if you've been following what goes on in college football and college football recruiting, those college football teams, when they do recruiting, they care so much about the multi-sport athlete or in particular track and field athletes that those particular players really have a tendency to kind of make it at that next level. Or make it in some shape or form at the next level as a safety or a corner. So I think Art Green really has some decent developmental upside there.
Yeah. I haven't really heard much about Art Green personally, but I don't think you can have enough cornerbacks on this roster. So the more the better, in my opinion.
Linebacker. Alex Singleton is your starter. End of conversation. No, Alex Singleton is going to be your starting linebacker. However, it appears that Jonas Griffith might be the most athletic linebacker of the entire bunch. So what we were kind of speculating, what we were kind of feeling out in terms of where things were currently looking for, who's going to be opposite of Alex Singleton, it might actually end up being Jonas Griffith. If he's going to be showing those kinds of signs, those kinds of, athletic traits where he was pre-injury, right? And I think people have a tendency to kind of forget a little bit about, Griffith. Yeah, it was in those Kenny Young years, when he was opposite of, Josie Jewell before Alex Singleton came in. But, he's got a lot of athleticism to him. And so I think having Cody Barton, who's a pass coverage linebacker, he may not necessarily be the greatest run stuffer, but I think that, he does get lost in the weeds a little bit in terms of we might forget a little bit about him at times. But Griffith, I feel like, is one where, he actually might be reactionary, athleticism, one of the more fun linebackers to watch when you're at training camp.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Griffith, he did also have a couple of nice plays in coverage in the passing game as well. He had a third down deflection. I don't remember what quarterback threw the ball, but he's apparently also been kind of used in coverage a little bit. He's been not terrible, which makes sense with how skilled and athletic he is, but you definitely did see him be more of that kind of sideline to sideline guy that's like used against the run, but he seems to be making some plays in the passing game as well in terms of in coverage.
Yeah. Now, was there something else that you mentioned in your big thesis statement? Should I say, like, before we kick things off, like that we didn't touch on there aside from Bo Nix?
Javonte, Greg Williams, Bo Nix, Josh Reynolds.
Was there anything we forgot?
I don't think so.
So that brings us to obviously the big thing of the day, and that was the quarterbacks. Bo Nix had himself a day, and this is actually his second go around where I think it was Sayer who has been kind of keeping tabs on, the padded practices, and I believe he tallied it that this is the second practice with Bo Nix where he's been there, with the first team offense in a padded practice. So technically, that means that Nix has had the padded practices 2 of the 3 times with the first team. And in this particular instance, when I was able to listen to the DNVR podcast today, James Palmer mentioned and Zach Stevens mentioned that they were working strictly on third down situations.
Yeah.
And the aggressive nature that Nix showed, I think, helped him really win the day.
Absolutely. He's not afraid to let it rip and try to get the ball into some tight spaces in coverage. And he continues to. We heard that he had a great day, best day so far of his camp on Saturday when he came in, threw a few interceptions, and then turned it around. And we hear once again that he has now today was the best day of his camp. So he continues to kind of put some stuff together and fight back against the Jarrett Stidham should be the starter allegations that we've seen. But no, love to see it. Definitely. Sean Payton himself said how, impressed he is with Bo Nix in camp and his kind of progress there. So yeah, absolutely. You love to see it.
I wouldn't say it's nothing to where you have to call it off, right? Like the Bo Nix is going to be the guy now, and then let's get him, those first team reps. That said, though, it is vital, as Brandon said. It is vital that as a quarterback or really any player that you stack days together. You stack days together, and then at that point, if you continue to do that, you are going to influence and force a coach to make that decision easier for you and name you the starter. So I think that.
Well, that and one of the other things too that you seem to continuously hear about Bo Nix is he's not rattled by anything. He's had some poor plays, he's had some interceptions, and then he just comes right back and throws some touchdowns and makes some good plays and definitely makes some plays with his feet too, with his athleticism. So you'd love to hear that. Interceptions are going to happen. People are going to make a big deal about it. I still remember, I think someone said Patrick Mahomes has thrown 7 interceptions in his rookie training camp, and then what did he do? But Bo Nix continues to prove that, obviously he is mature. He's a very mature person coming into the league at 24 after playing in college football for 60 games and is married and has an adult life. As opposed to sometimes these rookies come in and they're still kind of like a kid. But you like to see that he doesn't let anything get him down, and he's consistent. He's the same guy day in, day out. That's another thing that I heard and read and saw from people that are on the ground there at training camp, is that he's the same guy. If he has a bad day, if he has a good day, he doesn't let it get him down. He doesn't change what he does. He goes about his business. He goes about his reads, his progressions. He does what he needs to do. And I think that that's going to help him continue to have some good days in camp. I think he's going to show you that in preseason, which Coach Payton specifically confirmed that there will be starters playing in the preseason. So I'm excited to see that. But yeah, you love to see it from Bo Nix. He seems very mature. If you see any of his pressers, sounds like a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
I know we said that before, but yeah, I just don't know. I don't see how there's an option where he's not QB1.
Right.
I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. Well, I think we all know. You and I both know. That's where we would want it to go. That's where it feels like things are certainly heading. And you touched on something that I feel like, is so important to reinforce here. And I have to give the DNVR Broncos credit on this because there's a fantastic, I shared basically the segment of it on social media where James Palmer, Zach Stevens talk about Nick specifically today. And it's about a 10-minute clip, if you will. But he talks about roughly that exact same thing, Brandon. And, every single quarterback is built different. Every single quarterback is built different to where, depending on how they lead or how they operate within the offense or how they carry themselves on or off the field. But there is one consistent type of leader who are rather successful at the next level, in essence, the NFL. And that is the stoic leader that is, I threw a touchdown, but it's all about that next play, right? Or,
he's a goldfish.
Right, exactly. It's all I thought about was the scene in Ted Lasso was being a goldfish. And I think that, for Bo, that is something that I think the fact that he was able to learn something like that early on in his collegiate career has really helped benefit him in that particular aspect and that maturity to where he grew not just as a player, but a person as well. And so I think that having that Auburn experience, going to that school where he wanted to play at Auburn, like I hate to use this as an example, but and I'm sure there are Husker Bronco fans that, listen to Manely Broncos podcast. I love you guys. Thank you for joining us. I don't want to, make you guys mad by saying this by any means, but let's just say Dylan Raiola, plays really bad, right? Plays really bad at Nebraska. And then he transfers over to, some other school and he shines, right? Like that's basically what happened with Bo Nix. He really wanted to play. He really wanted to play at Auburn, and he had a lot of, bad moments there at Auburn. Then he transfers over to Oregon, has a very coachable, team that he went to in Oregon with Dan Lanning, basically the product of Nick Saban. And so I think that with him going to those types of environments have helped shape him mentally and physically to the type of player and quarterback that he is right now. And so that is, and I think that for him, the fact he's already able to ingrain that into, his mindset will only benefit him. So when you see things like Saturday, like the moment when I was able to practice on that Saturday and he threw a very underthrown ball on 7-on-7 to Levi Wallace, right? He threw that underthrown ball in 7-on-7 of Levi Wallace, but immediately following that, he had 3 touchdowns in red zone drill to P. Ryan, to Dulcich, and I'll just say Michael Bandy. It was maybe someone else, but that quick mentality of we're just gonna basically just respond, and we're gonna respond quickly. Like having that kind of response is something that is going to ingrain you with your teammates and especially the coaching staff and especially Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just excited to see him continue to prove the haters wrong. That's all I want to see.
And one thing in particular is to wrap that up. Palmer talked about how he wasn't comparing Bo Nix to CJ Stroud, but CJ Stroud had some of those same makeup in his rookie year to where he was coming in and he had the mind of a goldfish. Like he came in, really bad play. Okay, let's roll. Let's string some really positive plays together. And then because of all of that, and because of that goldfish mentality, he was able to put forth arguably the greatest rookie season we will ever see, in the NFL. And so I think that again, though that type of leadership, that type of mentality will really carry a long way for the team. Will it work out? that's anyone's guess. But I think that like the fact that something like that is, already, in his DNA is the biggest win of them all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So
I'm excited.
as far as some of the other quarterback conversation, Sean did say that it's possible, not likely, but it's possible that they carry 3 quarterbacks.
Do you see Zach Wilson making this team right now? Answer the question today, July 31st.
Yes. I'm just going to stick to my guns because I think that I'll just stick to the guns of what I just have a vibe of what I think is happening. And I think that they want Zach to work out, but they
traded for him.
And I obviously know, that they want to see what he continues to have. And I think it's very vital for them to, this is Stidham's last year. This is also Stidham's last year. So if Zach is just, and I've said it before, if he's able to just be a sponge, be that quarterback where, he's occupying a roster spot. I can't talk. Occupying a roster spot. Yeah, he is, but it's far more beneficial for him to really learn that Sean Payton offense and not really have any sort of playing time, and really be that Sam Darnold, if you will. But be that Sam Darnold. And I think that if he's able to do that, it'll be far more beneficial. And I think it's far more beneficial to have, 3 quarterbacks on your team than 2, really, because especially in this day and age of injuries and depth, I just think that it's far more beneficial for him to be on that roster, than the fact that, maybe they do carry 2, but in terms of long-term planning, the more it works out that way, you can move on from Stidham. Zach will be your backup behind Zach Wilson. And I think stylistically, Bo and Zach will really work well together stylistically.
Yeah. I'm torn. I don't know if I can say yes or no right now, and I know I pressured you to say yes or no. I'm gonna say no for now. I don't know if I'm right. I might be totally wrong. I also reserve the right to change my opinion at any time, but I don't know. I just think that clearly, obviously, Bo Nix is staying on this roster, but you've just continued to hear good things about Jarrett Stidham and what he's doing in camp and what he's shown in terms of his, comfortability in this offense and with these players. I wouldn't even be surprised if he is your week 1 starter. I also would be surprised if it is Bo Nix, but I think Jarrett Stidham has proven that he can be a reliable backup. And Zach Wilson, I hope it works out for him, and maybe we do keep 3 guys, and maybe that works out. But I think right now, I would almost rather give one of those extra spots to someone else in the wide receiver room,
maybe,
or maybe another offensive lineman.
Yeah,
especially given the injury today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's I think it's a good question to revisit, and maybe closer to preseason. But I don't know. Right now, I'm going to say no. But I don't think I would be surprised if he is still on the roster. I just haven't heard, he's definitely the one that I've heard the least good things about.
Right. And I will say this, what is probably going to squash the idea of him staying on the roster, right, Brendan, is if the trend continues, and we all know it's a performance-based business. If the trend continues and he's not playing great, he's not playing great, you have to cut your losses. You traded a 7th round pick for him, but it was a 7th round draft.
That's nothing.
Right, exactly. It's nothing. The only reason why I feel like there's at least some semblance of a significance that maybe that Zach wants to be on the Broncos from Sean's perspective is, well, they spent, weirdly enough, they spent like a month to try and figure out a deal for Zach Wilson, and this is what they came up with. So it's the only reason why I feel like he at least sees something in him for it to be like, oh, well, maybe they do want to keep him on the roster. But if it continues, if the trend continues where he is just so bad, and it continues into preseason specifically, because let's be fair, Wilson probably is going to be getting a majority of maybe the third preseason game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he's really bad in that third preseason game and even the first and second preseason game, it's fair to say that they might even actually cut their losses sooner rather than later.
I think it could happen for sure.
So, it's worth talking about the what is it, the Quinn Bailey news again. I wouldn't say it's a major loss per se, but where it gets major, right, Brandon, would be your depth. And I think that this is where it's really going to be fascinating because, yeah, he's a swing tackle that can also play guard. And I really like this conversation from the Locked On Broncos people where, when you talk about it from the Quinn Bailey perspective is it's about the extra, remember the Lions, right? When the Lions an extra, man, downfield or an illegal man downfield, right? When they kept getting, those calls, right? Or a guy didn't check in basically for, an extra lineman basically, right? And so I think that is an invaluable player to have on your roster. And I can't tell you the amount of times when we went to, when we were at like that Patriots game specifically, or even that Chargers game, and the amount of times we actually heard 75 was reported ineligible or reported eligible. So I think that, I think that, it's a valuable position. And so that's where guys like Alex Pofcheski, Frank Crum, even a Throckmorton, we're not hearing a lot about Throckmorton right now. Matt Pert is another one. But specifically, that guard position, that swing guard where he could do tackle and he can do guard. And that actually might be where Bailey is, but it's a valuable position. And it's the determining factor of whether or not you want to keep 7 linemen or 8 offensive linemen.
Yeah. I mean, I think also you've heard some nice things about Matt Pert, looking pretty decent out there and being like, maybe he's going to be your swing tackle guy. So I definitely think it'll be interesting to see. Definitely sucks to hear about the Quinn Bailey injury. Thankfully, it's not like, I mean, it's bad. It's like a broken ankle, but it's not like it's a bone injury. It's not like a soft tissue hamstring injury or like an ACL tear or something. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, again, I think instead of I would personally rather have an extra offensive lineman or keep another one of these wide receivers than carry 3 quarterbacks right now, just because I don't think you can overrate depth on the offensive line. Like you just can't have too many.
Well, and this is a head coach that loves trenches. He talked about it in his presser like a week ago or so ago. He loves trenches. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he moves on from Zach Wilson. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a head coach who cut his losses and made it very easy and known that things just weren't working out with Russell Wilson either. And so I think that, he can definitely cut his losses with Zach Wilson, as quick as a hiccup. So, and if anything that makes it easier for them to either keep, an extra offensive lineman because of this injury, I think it's something certainly to consider. Now, The other question in the room is the biggest troll on the planet, Josh Sherman, and he says,
No, we definitely beaten the Raiders, though.
Are we finally winning a game against the Raiders?
Yep, absolutely.
Are you confident in actually saying that we might actually sweep the Raiders? Is that actually what you're...
I don't know if I'm saying we're going to sweep them. We're absolutely going to beat them at least one time.
Okay, so let's go.
Who's their quarterback?
It's probably going to be Gardner Minshew.
Is it? Oh, I heard they're both bad right now. So
I don't know. According to X, or according to Twitter, Anthony Brown Jr. has been getting the the popularity contest in terms of within Raider fans right now, as far as that they're really hyping him up. Maybe that's actually a sign. If you're really hyping up Anthony Brown, it goes to show you how really bad your quarterback room is with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell.
I think we'll see. I definitely think we're going to beat them one time this season. I don't know if I'm going to say we're going to sweep them, but I think we will beat them.
Okay. Let's go through I'm just curious. And people that are in the chat, I'm curious your guys' confidence level. Chiefs, we're not gonna sweep them, obviously. We still might be able to take a game, but we're not gonna sweep them. So that's not gonna happen. What is your confidence level with the Los Angeles Chargers to sweep the Chargers?
Higher than... I need to see what their offense looks like first.
By the way, have you seen all the clips about Quinn Johnston in camp?
Oh, yeah, he's horrible. He's horrible. I saw this meme. I'll just send it to you. There's a meme of basically like an insanely jacked, huge, ripped dude. And someone asking him, like, how'd you get so big? He's like, here's my secret. I only did one thing. Every time Quentin Johnston drops a pass, I do one push-up. It's bad. It's down. They're down bad. They're down bad in LA. I need to know what their offense is going to look like first, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me because it's the Chargers. Like, Justin Herbert, still very, 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 very good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Jim Harbaugh is an amazing coach. I heard an insane statistic. Greg Roman, 7 of the last 10 seasons, has had at least 10 wins as an offensive coordinator. I don't know. I mean, we want to make that joke that they have no weapons and they're just going to play mediocre to decent defense because the defense is okay and run the ball. And could that happen? Sure. I need to see at least one game from them before I say anything definitively.
Well,
I'm fascinated to know what happens. How are the Chargers going to charge her this time?
And let's be real. That kind of statistic is a bit inflated because it's, he's basically been with Harbaugh his entire career.
That's true.
So it was probably Harbaugh who's the one that's carrying Greg Roman, not the other way around. I think
who's the wide receiver one? Like literally who? Like if you get to guess, is it Ladd McConkey?
I was gonna say it's probably Ladd McConkey.
I guess it could be Josh Palmer.
Yeah.
It's literally between those two guys.
Yeah. It really is.
Quentin Johnston's bust. I'm sorry.
Look, as much as it is kind of somewhat scary, the fact that they didn't draft or that they drafted Joe Alt so they can lock, both sides down with Rashawn, with Slater
and Alt. Yeah.
Thank you, Chargers, for not drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, it's just thank you for not drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. And so thank you to the Arizona Cardinals for taking Marvin Harrison Jr. so that the Los Angeles Chargers did not have to.
I mean, the thing that's funny to me is like Quentin Johnston was drafted in the first round. He was the second wide receiver drafted in the first round. You know who else was drafted in that same class after him? Zay Flowers has been pretty decent for the Ravens. Jordan Addison been pretty decent for the Vikings, except I think he recently got
a lot of people wanted him with the Chargers.
A DUI issue. Jonathan Mingo, who knows? I don't really know. Jaden Reed on the Packers been pretty good. Rashee Rice on the Chiefs. Basically, their only wide receiver that exists. Mims, we'll see. Tank Dell, Houston. Really good.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua in round 5 with the Rams. Incredible. Like,
Which, to make matters worse, Puka Nacua plays at their stadium for another team. Like,
I don't know.
But anyway, so then what's your confidence? Is your confidence better or worse when it comes to the Raiders and the Chargers? That's what I'm trying to get at.
In theory, I should be more confident that we will sweep the Raiders, but for some reason, I'm more confident that we sweep the Chargers.
See, I think it's the Raiders because there's just
it should be, but I just need to see them be good. I need to see what they do. I need to see one game before I change my mind.
I just think that based on the early returns of where we currently sit, it's still the Raiders for me because
you're probably right.
I cannot get the Harbaugh thing out of my brain in the sense of
I can't either, but they're the Chargers.
I know.
They're going to charge her. Like, they find a way every year. So we'll see.
I will say this.
I reserve the right to change my mind.
I will say this. If the Chargers do find a way to charge her, then it is something to do with whatever it is that's down there with the Los Angeles Chargers because Jim Harbaugh is far too good a coach to have stuff like that happen. Meaning it's got something to do with their organization down there and not necessarily Harbaugh. So what are some of your other thoughts as we kind of wrap things up and wrap the show up? And
I'm just continuing to be excited about what I've heard about Javonte Williams because we need to have a good running game this year. That is absolutely crucial to Bo Nix having a successful rookie quarterback season on this team. And at the very least, it's going to make it as easy as possible for him. And I'm hyped to hear about how good Javonte Williams has looked. And Audric Estime is also a dude. So I'm excited to see what happens there. And also Greg Dulcich, please, I'm begging you, just please. That's all I'm going to say.
Please. 17 games. We just need to be healthy. Just need you to be healthy, man. Just play for 17 games. Also, it's worth mentioning this as well. I got a chance to see the new kickoff and how it was possibly going to be operated. And I will say this from the schematics and how that they were going to use this kickoff. I want to at least let it be known that one of the players that I saw that was taking some of those kickoffs, Jaleel McLaughlin. It was Jaleel McLaughlin, Traymon Smith, and Marvin Mims, I think, for a little bit, as far as taking some of those. Also, punt returns. Marvin was still taking some of those punt returns. I think I saw Batty for a little bit. I think sometimes it gets confusing in camp.
Beatty?
Beatty. I said Batty. Anyway. But Tyler Beatty, it gets confusing when you see Beatty and McLaughlin on the field, especially when it's not pads, because obviously, one wears 36 and the other one wears 38, so it can be a bit confusing. But I thought that was a bit interesting. I thought I saw a few offensive linemen or one offensive lineman that was being used on that kickoff, along with a couple fullbacks that were being used. So basically, Burton and Atkins being used, on that kickoff. And I think that is one thing that is going to be fascinating to certainly see. And in terms of preseason here in a couple weeks, actually, we're going to see it in a day because I think the Hall of Fame game, football's back. What is it, a day? I think it's the Bears and somebody, right? Is the Hall of Fame game. So we're actually going to get a chance to see the very first, installment of the new kickoff. So that'll be
fun.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what that looks like in a game setting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very curious to see, as Robert said, curious to see how, to see how all that shakes out. Yeah, I think there's really not much to add. I again will be there August 9th. I'll be there August 9th. Practice will be at 12:15. And I'll also be back there on August 16th. And then I will be going to the Packers preseason game. What is it? That's Saturday? I think it's that Saturday, or was it that Sunday? When they play the Packers for preseason. And then obviously the wait is over, Brandon. This is probably the last thing to finally touch on. The wait is over. We can finally get a chance to purchase the Broncos throwback uniforms at the store.
Who are you getting?
I was just going to ask you.
I don't know yet. I can't decide.
I think for me, gone are the days where I'm going to be getting a current player. As tempting as it is to get a Bo Nix throwback uniform or a Troy Franklin throwback uniform or a PS2 throwback uniform because he was in the the trailer, the video that they did, the video release for the throwback uniform. It'd be great to do a PS2 uniform. Be great to do a Quinn Miners throwback uniform. There's so many choices you could do with a current player. I've just been burned far too many times with the quarterbacks of yesteryear and getting jerseys and getting burned with them, a.k.a. Russell Wilson, a.k.a. Drew Lock. Basically number 3. So what am I going to roll with? It's a long-winded answer. A throwback player. If I'm going to be doing a throwback uniform, I'm going to be doing a throwback player. So I think I've got some choices. There's a whole reason why I did a poll there on Twitter. But I'm kind of deciding between Randy Gradishar, Floyd Little, Carl Mecklenburg, maybe Terrell Davis, and probably another throwback player here and there, maybe Shannon Sharp or something. But the top 3 choices I feel like are Mecklenburg, Gradishar, and Floyd Little.
That'd be sweet.
Did I influence your decision at all?
I definitely want to get a throwback player. Don't know who it's going to be yet. I also don't have the money to do it yet.
I actually think it's much harder. I think it's actually much harder to choose a throwback player than it would be a current player. I will say that. And obviously too, we should say this. It's also up to the store to make it available. If you have a custom throwback uniform that you're able to make and you're able to do, 44 little and stuff like that, it's a moot point. We're good there. But anything that is, a jersey that they offer for you to have, you're basically given a selected choice to choose from it. So kind of makes your decision even tougher, if you will.
Yeah.
So, Robert, I appreciate the fact and the belief that you might have in Bo Nix there. I hope it works out. And I realize you're not talking throwbacks, but I love the belief. I love the belief in Bo Nix there. Just know, coming from someone who's been burned with Drew Lock jerseys and Russell Wilson jerseys, I just don't know if I would go with a quarterback just yet. As much as I do like some Bo Nix right now, I don't know if I would roll. So, all righty. Well, with that, I want to just wrap things up. And before we go, again, want to give a huge shout out to everybody that was in the chat. We had a couple new people in there. Obviously I see Robert. Devin was in the house. Bonnie, haven't seen him in a bit, was in the chat. Keith Brugman, I see in the chat. No Big Mike tonight. A little bit disappointed in that. Josh, the greatest troll of all time, I see you. Thank you for hopping in the chat. And if you have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine, I am very disappointed in you. And I will say it requires maximum effort to go and watch Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, let's do this. Let's actually, ignore Brandon right now. Truly, ignore Brandon. If you have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine, please ignore Brandon.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not moving in a specific direction for any reason.
He's not trying to personally spoil the movie for you.
I didn't say anything. I did nothing.
But go see it. It is incredible. It is one of the best movies that I think I've seen in quite a long time. The comedy was incredible. Actually, the plot was fantastic. We're going to go see it again on Friday. At least I'm going to try and go see it again on Friday. Yeah, it was a fantastic movie. I hope you all can go see it. And if you have, DM me or Brandon on Twitter, specifically Brandon, because I actually want to see the amount of notifications that just light up his Twitter DMs for just the amount of people that will just blow up his Twitter DM. Anyway, follow Brandon.
Because I won't see it in time and it'll just continue to grow.
Exactly. Yeah. Follow Brandon at Brandon Miller PO, myself at Cameron Parker PO. It's been an awesome show. We before we go, we might be doing a special edition episode. Still kind of in the works. We have a special guest on Saturday probably for a show for Manely Broncos. Again, still in the works. We're probably going to see if we can shoot for 1:30. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But something to watch out for. We may be doing a Manely Broncos show on Saturday around 1:30. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a great show. And if not, we will see you guys next week for another installment of the Manely Broncos podcast. And we will see you guys right there on Wednesday. Same time, same bat channel, 7:30 p.m. right here on the MHRT network.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.